In March 2026, there was this uh, perfectly coded artificial intelligence, and it sent a single, mathematically flawless command to a robotic arm on a high-speed manufacturing line.
Right, out in the real world.
Exactly. And the code had a calculated error rate of exactly 0.01%. Now, if you are using like an AI text model to write an email, a 0.01% error rate means you get a slightly weird adjective or, I don't know, a misplaced comma.
Yeah, you just laugh at it, delete it, and move on.
Right. But out there on the factory floor, that exact same statistical variance was handed over to a physical power tool. The AI instructed the robotic actuator to apply a precise amount of torque to a titanium spindle.
And this is where the math meets reality.
Yeah, because the AI was operating in this mathematical vacuum. It didn't account for the fact that the warehouse was 95 degrees that day, and the titanium had microscopically expanded.
Right, thermal expansion.
Yep. It didn't account for the fact that the actuator's bearings had been worn down by like a fraction of a millimeter over the last 10,000 cycles. So what actually happened? The arm applied the quote-unquote perfect torque.
Oh, man.
It sheared the titanium spindle clean in half, destroyed the machine housing, and shut down a multi-million-dollar production line for 3 days. I mean, the blueprint said it would work, but the physical reality was this landscape of diagnostic muddy waters.
It is the defining technological crisis of our current moment, honestly. We've built these incredibly sophisticated, probabilistic brains, and we're suddenly realizing that they have absolutely no idea how to survive the brutal, unforgiving friction of the physical world.
Totally. So welcome to this deep dive. If you're listening to this, I know exactly who you are. You are the learner. You're that person who is, insanely curious. You're always looking to cut through the massive information overload out there, but you absolutely refuse to lose the nuance.
You want the depth without the fluff.
Exactly. You want to know not just what is happening, but exactly how and why it's happening. So welcome. We have a real mission today, and we have a stack of sources that, at first glance, looks completely, beautifully chaotic.
It really is an incredibly eclectic, almost jarring pile of documents we've got in front of us today.
Seriously, let me just paint a picture of what we're looking at here for you. Over here, we have a highly covert psychological profile of an engineer named Prasad Bond. It's labeled Profiler Zero Protocol.
Which is intense enough on its own.
Right. But right next to it, and this is where it gets really wild, we have Prasad's highly detailed Vedic astrology chart and his Varshfal, which is his annual astrological predictive report for the year 2026.
Yeah, ancient astrology right next to a modern psych profile.
Exactly. Then, bridging into a completely different world, we have these corporate strategy documents on elite prompt engineering and a massive operational manual called the AI Blueprint. Plus, we have a strict AI system prompt based entirely on the legendary industrial designer Dieter Rams.
That's a huge shift from astrology.
I know. And finally, we have a really stark, deeply technical manifesto on physical engineering called Entropy in the Machine.
If you laid this out on a table, you'd think we were investigating 3 entirely different phenomena across, 3 different centuries.
Right. But here is our aha thesis for today. Here is the core question we are going to answer. What do ancient astrological remedies, massive burnout in the modern tech industry, and the catastrophic metal shearing failure of AI-driven robotic arms all have in common?
And the connective tissue between all these seemingly disparate things is actually a design philosophy. Specifically, we're going to use the legendary industrial designer Dieter Rams's philosophy of less but better, or in his native German, weniger, aber besser, to explain what the sources identify as the ultimate bottleneck of 2026.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, we're going to explore how software engineering is currently failing because it completely ignored the physical constraints of hardware. And parallel to that, how brilliant humans are burning out because they ignore the biological constraints of their own bodies.
The fatal disconnect between the mind and the material.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how AI is failing out there in the physical world of titanium and steel, we first have to look at how we're actually designing the software, the AI mind itself. And that brings us to this fascinating Dieter Rams system prompt from our sources.
Yes. For those who might need a quick refresher, Dieter Rams is one of the most influential industrial designers of the 20th century. He's famous for designing brawn consumer products, so calculators, radios, record players, coffee makers.
Really iconic stuff.
Yeah, his work famously inspired the clean, minimalist design language of early Apple products. His whole ethos was about stripping away the non-essential, the decorative, the flashy, so that the product's actual physical function could shine. He believed that good design is unobtrusive.
And some brilliant prompt engineer out there, has taken that physical design philosophy and turned it into a strict set of operating rules for a large language model. The prompt literally forces the AI to operate under RAM's industrial design principles.
Which is just a wild application of physical design.
It is. The very first rule is utility first. It dictates prioritize function over form. Answer the core problem immediately. Eliminate any text, code, or explanation that does not directly help the user achieve their goal.
Which completely strips away the conversational illusion that AI companies have spent years building. Because the second rule is restraint and neutrality. The prompt explicitly tells the AI, you're a tool, not a companion. Remain completely unobtrusive.
I love that, unobtrusive.
Yeah. It says never use conversational filler emojis, enthusiastic affirmations, or introductory pleasantries. It even forbids adding those, decorative summary paragraphs at the end of responses.
Oh man, no more. Sure, I can absolutely help you with that. Just the raw answer. But it makes me wonder, why do LLMs even do that in the first place? Like, why are they naturally so conversational and chatty?
Well, it comes down to how they're trained. Large language models are, at their core, probabilistic prediction engines. They're trained on human conversation, which is naturally filled with pleasantries, filler words, and social lubrication.
Right, because we want to be polite.
Exactly. So when an AI says, I'd be happy to help with that, it's not actually feeling helpful. It's simply calculating that those tokens are statistically highly likely to appear at the beginning of a helpful response. It's probabilistic padding.
Probabilistic padding, that's a great term.
And the RAM's prompt treats that padding as a design flaw, right? A decorative excess that obscures the utility of the tool.
It also demands absolute clarity along with honesty and precision. It tells the AI not to overstate the capabilities of a solution. If a coding framework has limitations, the AI has to state them plainly. It frames accuracy not just as a technical requirement, but as a form of deep respect for the user's time.
What's fascinating here is the specific mechanism they use to enforce this.
Yeah.
They don't just give the AI general guidelines like, be concise. LLMs are historically really bad at following vague conceptual rules.
Right, they just ignore them.
Exactly. Instead, they give it a hard, unyielding ban on specific vocabulary and syntax.
Oh, the banned vocabulary list in this document is incredible. It is a targeted hit list of every annoying AI buzzword we have all grown to hate.
It's so satisfying to read.
It strictly forbids the words delve, tapestry, vibrant, crucial, showcase, testament, pivotal, underscore, seamless, foster, elevate, and landscape.
And we have to understand why those specific words are banned. When an LLM lacks high-value, specific information about a topic, it defaults to high-probability, low-information tokens.
Like filler.
Exactly. Words like tapestry or seamless are statistical crutches. They sound authoritative, but they convey zero actual data.
It also bans structural crutches.
Yeah.
The prompt says no negative parallelisms, meaning the AI can't say it is not just about X, it is also about Y. It completely bans using the rule of three to pad descriptions.
So no more saying a solution is fast, secure, and reliable.
Right. It even bans starting sentences with transition words like additionally or furthermore.
Which forces the AI to just state the fact. It removes the rhetorical flourish entirely. If we connect this to the AI blueprint source we have, this strict constraint makes perfect sense out in the real world.
Yeah, the blueprint has a whole section dedicated to what they call the AI slop epidemic.
The sources are adamant that perfectly polished, generic AI content is failing massively right now. People are developing an immune response to it.
Definitely. The blueprint says specificity beats generic every single time, and they give this great before and after example of how to communicate. The AI slop version is, in today's fast-paced business landscape, seamless integration is crucial for success.
We've all read that a million times on LinkedIn.
Right, our eyes just glaze over.
Yeah.
But the high signal truth version, the constrained version is, I gained 14K followers in 2 months without posting daily.
Or taking the generic 5 crucial tips for better productivity versus the specific lived experience of, I wasted $10,000 on Facebook ads before I figured this exact metric out.
It's night and day.
The blueprint emphasizes that AI can mimic the tone of expertise, but it cannot replicate the specific friction of how a human actually thinks and fails.
Yeah.
Clients don't want a tapestry of vibrant landscapes. They want the exact 10-day operational plan.
So Ram's philosophy of Weniger Ababesser is the antidote to this AI slop because it forces the system to provide signal, not noise.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where I need to push back on this a bit
Yeah.
because there is a massive glaring contradiction in our sources. We just spent all this time talking about minimalism, less but better, stripping away everything, no filler.
Right.
But then I turn the page to the elite prompt engineering document, and it's talking about how elite enterprise engineers are currently building 20,000 word prompts. And these massive prompts are designed to be, quote, deeply empathetic, wildly engaging, and indistinguishably human.
Yeah.
How does a massive 20,000 word prompt that literally programs in conversational empathy and vulnerability align with Dieter Ram's less, but better? Isn't that a total paradox?
It looks exactly like a paradox on the surface, absolutely.
Yeah.
But here is the critical distinction we have to make, and it really changes how we view software entirely. Less doesn't mean a short word count. Less means removing the unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
A 20,000 word prompt is actually a masterpiece of architectural restraint because every single token is load-bearing.
Load-bearing restraint. At 20,000 words, walk me through how that actually works.
So to get an AI to behave indistinguishably from a human over a long, complex interaction, say a customer service bot handling a hostile refund or a tutoring AI working with a frustrated student, you can't just let the model guess its next token.
Right, it'll just default to being polite and unhelpful.
Exactly. You have to build a highly constrained, multi-layered system. The source breaks down the elite prompt engineer into three distinct roles. The first is the architect.
Okay, so the structural and technical mastery.
Right. The architect manages context windows. Think of a context window as the AI's short-term memory. If you feed an AI a massive amount of text, it doesn't weigh all those words equally. The architect understands how large language models weigh tokens. They use something called the primacy and recency effect.
Meaning the AI pays the most attention to the very beginning and the very end of the prompt, but gets kind of hazy in the middle.
Precisely. So the architect physically structures the prompt to put the most crucial, unbreakable constraints at the very top and the very bottom of the code block. This ensures the AI doesn't forget its core rules, 15,000 words into a dynamic conversation.
Wow.
They build in modular blocks and conditional logic. They don't just write a paragraph. They write code that says, if the user expresses frustration, parameter X, transition to narrative module Y while maintaining constraint Z.
That's intense.
It's not a rambling 20,000-word essay. It's a tight, highly disciplined 20,000-word code base.
And then there's the second role, the psychologist. Deep persona synthesis. This is where it gets kind of spooky for me. They don't just write, act nice, or be helpful. They explicitly define the AI's backstory, its flawed but relatable human traits, its internal monologues.
Yeah, the depth is staggering.
They use cognitive empathy mapping to force the AI to validate the user's unspoken fears before offering a solution. They even program in synthetic vulnerability, instructing the AI to occasionally admit a minor uncertainty or use very specific, calibrated, self-deprecating humor.
Which is the exact opposite of the standard, unconstrained AI that just confidently hallucinates wrong answers and tells you the sky is green with a smiling emoji. The psychologist constrains the AI's confidence.
Exactly. And the third role is the master rhetorician. This is all about pacing and progressive disclosure. They program the AI to use open loops, introducing a complex concept, but explicitly promising to resolve it 3 paragraphs later, which keeps the human reader hooked. They calibrate the microtones of the vocabulary.
And you can see how this all requires obsessive, localized iteration. The source says these engineers test edge cases constantly, tweaking a single sentence, sometimes a single word, to fix a cascading logic error deep in the interaction.
It's wild.
It's about building a mind within strict physical feeling constraints. And there is a specific tool they use to enforce this quality, mentioned in the AI blueprint, the 5-point depth check.
Yes. Let's break this down because this is such a practical takeaway for you listening, whether you're writing a prompt, drafting an important email to your boss, or putting together a presentation. Point 1, the perspective split.
Such a good one.
The rule is read your output as a skeptical CEO, as a junior employee, and as a direct competitor. If your text fails to persuade or hold up against any of those 3 lenses, you must revise it.
It forces you out of your own echo chamber completely.
Point 2, the confidence score. Rate every single claim you make from 1 to 10. Anything that scores below a 7 gets immediately deleted or strictly sourced.
That is pure Dieter Rams. Remove the weak elements. Do not leave decorative, low-confidence statements in your design.
Point 3, specificity audit. Literally count your numbers. If your proposal or your prompt has fewer than 3 concrete data points, you haven't done enough research. Add metrics.
Ground it in reality.
Point 4, the so what test. Ask what the reader actually does with this information. What is the physical action they take? If the answer is nothing, cut the paragraph. And point 5, the comment seed. Write 3 thoughtful opposing comments for your own document to preload depth and anticipate friction.
The overarching lesson across all these prompt engineering docs is really profound. Less, but better means applying rigorous constraints to tame an infinite probability engine. It means treating accuracy, brevity, and structure as a form of respect for the user.
Right.
But here's the pivot point of our whole discussion. We've established how to write clean, minimalist code and prompts. We know how to constrain the software in the digital realm. But what happens when you take that perfect statistical code and you force it to interact with the real, messy, physical world?
So if a text model hallucinates, I get a weird recipe for pancakes, right? But you're saying a hardware hallucination is what happens when that same statistical guess is handed a physical power tool. And that brings us to the chilling manifesto from our sources, titled Entropy in the Machine, Bridging AI and Material Physics.
It really is a chilling read.
It starts with this incredibly stark pairing of sentences. AI operates in a vacuum. Engineering is defined by friction.
That is the core conflict of 2026, distilled into 10 words.
To really visualize this, there's a photograph included in the sources. Let me describe it for you. It's an extreme close-up of a machined metal part, like a heavy steel spindle on a lathe. Engraved right onto the physical metal is a strict engineering tolerance, plus or minus 0.0005 millimeters.
Very tight tolerance.
That is the absolute limit of physical reality for this part. But overlaid on top of this hard physical metal is a glowing digital probability bell curve. The text next to it reads, AI's physical limit, where probability meets friction.
It's a brilliant visual representation of why robotics companies are suddenly hitting a massive wall right now.
Explain the mechanics of that. How does an AI even talk to a robotic arm in the first place?
Right, so we are talking about vision language action models, or VLAs. Instead of just taking in text and spitting out text, these models take in visual data from a camera on the factory floor, process it using the language model's reasoning capabilities, and then translate that reasoning into physical action.
Okay.
They generate code that controls servos and actuators. They are literally calculating the physical state of the world and guessing the exact mathematical coordinates the robotic arm should move to next.
Okay, so the AI looks at a block of steel, calculates the math, and says, move the drill bit to X coordinate 10.5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a simulation, in a vacuum, that math is beautiful. It works flawlessly. But the physical world fundamentally rejects mathematical perfection. Metal fatigues, bearings wear down over thousands of uses. Thermal expansion alters the physical dimensions of a part depending on the ambient temperature.
So the math says the part is exactly 10.5 millimeters, but reality says it's 10.502 millimeters because the factory's air conditioning broke and it's hot outside, so the steel swelled.
Precisely. The AI sends a command based on statistical probability. It expects total 100% compliance from the physical environment. It does not account for the microscopic degradation that specific drill bit experienced over its last 10,000 cycles, or the thermal expansion of the steel.
And the manifesto spells out exactly what happens when those two realities collide. It says, on a manufacturing line, a robotic actuator shears a spindle and halts production for 3 days. A 0.01% error rate in the physical world isn't a funny sentence. It is a catastrophic physical system failure.
Because the software expects absolute perfection, but the hardware delivers a marginal variance. And over time, minute by minute, cycle by cycle, that marginal variance compounds. That is what entropy is.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources call this the hard bottleneck of March 2026. Venture capital firms are pouring billions of dollars into AI robotics, thinking that simply connecting a massive neural network to a robotic arm solves automation. But they are fighting a literal war between the deterministic and the non-deterministic.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. The physical world, physics, materials, science that is deterministic. Gravity works the same way every single time. Tensile strength is a measurable, finite fact. The yield point of titanium does not change based on its mood.
Right.
But large language models are non-deterministic. They're probabilistic. You can ask them the exact same question twice and get 2 slightly different answers. So companies are deploying non-deterministic intelligence into highly deterministic physical environments.
And they're failing. Because, as the manifesto bluntly puts it, software patches cannot fix physical entropy. You can't write a line of code to make a worn-out ball bearing smooth again. You can't code away metal fatigue.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, back to Dieter Rams, designing a software system that completely ignores the physical reality, the wear and tear of the hardware it operates on, violates the very first Rams principle, utility first. A tool must function. If your probabilistic AI code destroys the expensive CNC machine it's running on, it has zero utility. It is fundamentally bad design.
The source has this great, almost poetic line, "Code is a liability if it ignores physics. Make the code respect the material."
Make the code respect the material. It's a profound statement. It means understanding the limits of your medium. It means building friction into your mathematical models.
Okay, so we have seen what happens when perfect, probabilistic software ignores the friction and fatigue of physical metal. It shears the spindle, it breaks the machine. But wait, if a solid titanium spindle can suffer catastrophic fatigue from a 0.01% error rate, what happens to the human engineer writing the prompt?
Yeah, that's the real question.
Does the human brain have a yield strength? We are going to pivot and look at what happens when a brilliant human mind ignores the friction and fatigue of its own physical body.
This is where the story gets deeply personal and, frankly, very relatable for anyone working in high-stress cognitive fields right now.
We are opening the file on Prasad Bhan. We have this psychological dossier on him, designated Profiler 0. And alongside this clinical profile, we have his highly detailed Vedic astrology chart and his Varshfal, which is a yearly astrological prediction report for 2026 based on the exact time and coordinates of his birth.
The juxtaposition of a cold clinical psychological profile and an ancient astrological chart is striking. But what is truly shocking is that they tell the exact same story about this man's impending breakdown.
Let's look at the Profiler 0 document first. Prasad is publicly projecting the persona of a macro systems thinker. He's exactly the kind of engineer we were just talking about. He's trying to integrate 2026 AI frameworks with physical hardware.
Right.
His personal mantra, according to the psychological file, is literally Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
He is entirely head-driven. The profile notes he relies heavily on mental agility, adaptability, and continuous rapid learning. In the Big Five personality traits, he shows extremely high openness to experience and high neuroticism.
Which is a tough combo.
Yeah. In the DISC behavioral model, he has a high C, meaning compliance and analytical, fighting against a suppressed I influence and social interaction.
But privately, behind this brilliant analytical facade, the behavioral logs reveal a fractured operational state. The clinical diagnosis at the top of the file is heavy, operational burnout via cognitive avoidance.
Cognitive avoidance, that is a crucial term. He's actively trying to outthink his physical and emotional exhaustion.
It's like he's trying to run a high-end, next-generation video game on a laptop with a broken cooling fan. He keeps optimizing the software, he keeps closing background apps to free up memory, but the motherboard is literally melting on his desk because he's ignoring the physical heat.
That's a great analogy.
The profile states, "You are misapplying mechanical constraints to human and biological systems. When faced with interpersonal friction, you treat it like a misaligned gear, ignoring it and hoping the machine keeps running."
Ouch.
He's internalizing massive amounts of stress, which leads to cognitive fatigue. He writes publicly on his LinkedIn about feedback loops and tolerances for machines, but he has zero feedback loops or boundaries in his personal life.
He is building massive, towering intellectual castles while allowing his physical health, his sleep, and his financial foundations to completely erode. Now, what's fascinating here is how the astrological data mirrors this psychological breakdown with uncanny precision.
Okay, I have to stop you here. I have to push back. We are talking about cutting-edge LLM context windows and the physics of robotic actuators, and now we are looking at Vedic astrology. Skeptics listening to this are going to say this is complete pseudoscience.
Sure.
Why are we treating an astrological Varshfal with the same weight as a clinical psychological dossier?
It is a completely fair challenge. But we don't have to view the astrology as literal magic to understand its profound value in this context.
Okay, go on.
Think of Vedic astrology not as fortune-telling, but as an incredibly dense, ancient archetypal language used to map biological and psychological constraints. Long before we had the Big Five personality traits, or terms like cognitive avoidance, humans needed a framework to understand why some people are driven by logic but crippled by anxiety, or why others are deeply emotional but struggle with boundaries.
Right.
The astrological chart provides a localized, metaphorical blueprint of a human's baseline friction. It forces the individual to look at their inherent structural weaknesses. And in Prasad's case, the translation between the ancient archetype and the modern clinical diagnosis is flawless.
Fair enough. Walk us through his chart then. I have it right here, but the mechanics of Vedic astrology are dense. How exactly does it map to his burnout?
Okay, let's break it down mechanically. Prasad has a Gemini ascendant, or Lagna. The ascendant represents the physical body and the primary lens through which he interacts with the world. Gemini is an air element, and it is ruled by the planet Mercury.
Okay, air and Mercury.
The astrological text explicitly states that a Gemini ascendant gives a person excellent communication skills, high adaptability, and restless mental agility. His ultimate aspiration, according to the chart, is constant learning and mental stimulation. Sound familiar?
I think, therefore I am. It's his exact public persona from the psychological profile.
Right. It's the airy intellectual domain. But here is the structural flaw. Mercury, his ruling planet, the governor of his intellect, is placed in his sixth house in the zodiac sign of Scorpio.
What does the sixth house mean?
In Vedic astrology, the sixth house is the house of diseases, debts, enemies, and daily friction. It's the house of obstacles. Having your ruling planet there means your primary operating system is constantly dealing with stress. The report warns that this specific placement makes him highly prone to anxiety, overthinking, and nervous system or stomach disorders. He is literally wired to internalize daily friction into his physical nervous system.
And his moon. The moon represents the mind and the emotional baseline in Vedic astrology, right?
Yes. His moon is also placed in Scorpio, which is its sign of debilitation, meaning it operates at its lowest structural integrity there. Scorpio is a water sign, deep, secretive, and intense. The astrology report says those with a moon in a water sign are deeply emotional, sensitive, and profoundly intuitive.
Wow. Let me read from the Profiler Zero psychological decoding again, because this is wild. You mask deep-seated emotional sensitivity indicated by your highly perceptive water sign psychological traits behind rigid mechanical logic.
Yeah.
The modern profiler literally references the water sign astrology to explain his emotional state.
It's incredible. He has this intense emotional depth, the Scorpio moon, but he tries to process all of that heavy, turbulent emotion through the airy analytical intellect of his Gemini ascendant. When he encounters emotional friction, his intellect tries to treat it like a coding error.
But you cannot debug human emotion.
Exactly. You cannot logic your way out of sadness or exhaustion.
The astrology report also mentions Mars. Mars is the planet of action and conflict. It's in Sagittarius, in his seventh house, which is the house of partnerships and relationships. Mars is fiery and aggressive.
And what does it say?
The report explicitly warns of failures in partnerships or business done in partnership because of a tendency toward abrupt conflict or unspoken resentment. And his Saturn, the planet of restriction, boundaries, and hard physical reality, is debilitated in Aries. It says he faces problems gaining financial stability owing to a spendthrift nature and an inability to maintain long-term structural discipline.
Which perfectly aligns with the Profiler Zero, noting his erratic resource allocation and how he disperses his financial energy across low-yield intellectual distractions instead of building a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Prasad is living entirely in the probabilistic digital cloud of his brilliant mind. He is calculating the future of AI. He is theorizing about macro systems. But his actual hardware, his biology, his sleep, his digestion, his emotional boundaries, his bank account, is actively breaking down under the heat.
I have to ask you, listening to this, how many of us are exactly like Prasad? Think about your own week. How many of us are spending 10, 12, 14 hours a day living entirely in the digital intellectual ether?
Most of us, probably.
We are constantly optimizing our workflows. We are building complex systems. We are prompting AI to perfection. We are managing massive context windows in our own brains. But at the same time, we're eating garbage, we're sleeping 4 hours a night, and we're swallowing our emotional frustrations because we literally do not have the bandwidth to deal with them.
We are entirely ignoring the friction of our own physical reality. We are treating our bodies like the AI treats the robotic arm, expecting absolute compliance from a degrading physical system.
Yeah.
And just like the robotic arm that shears its spindle because the AI ignored metal fatigue, a human mind will eventually break the biological chassis if it continuously ignores physical and emotional exhaustion. The mind is non-deterministic, but the body is deterministic.
So how do we save Prasad? How do we prevent this catastrophic system failure in ourselves? We need a translation layer for Prasad, just like we need one to bridge the AI and the physical machine.
Yes, we need to apply DataRAMs less, but better directly to human biology. The Profiler Zero document outlines a strict four-phase prescription, and it is entirely about stripping away the intellectual fluff and grounding him violently back in physical reality.
Phase 1 is the baseline reset. The profiler tells Prasad point blank, your physical state dictates your cognitive yield. You are currently operating on borrowed biological debt.
The heavy line.
It mandates strict sleep parameters and nutritional anchoring. The quote is brutal, but undeniably true. A failing biological chassis cannot support a high-output 2026 systems thinker.
Utility first. The primary utility of the body is to support the functioning of the mind. If the foundation is crumbling, the castle falls, no matter how beautiful the architecture is.
Phase 2 is friction auditing. The instruction is, stop internalizing interpersonal conflict. Treat silent frustration as a catastrophic system error. If a boundary is crossed, communicate the breach instantly. No silent grinding.
This is crucial mechanically. Prasad treats interpersonal friction like a misaligned gear. He just hopes the machine keeps running. But unaddressed emotional friction is exactly like microscopic metal fatigue.
Right.
It compounds silently until the system snaps. Friction auditing means facing the reality of the material, the messy, uncomfortable reality of human relationships, and addressing it in real time.
Phase 3 is financial defragmentation, halting the dispersion of resources across low-yield distractions, consolidating capital, stop buying new domains for projects you'll never start.
I feel attacked.
We all do. And phase 4 is identity consolidation. Stop bouncing between isolated interests. Own a single, highly valuable identity in the marketplace.
This raises an important question, though. These 4 phases are modern, clinical, almost corporate-sounding prescriptions for burnout. But how do the ancient astrological remedies address this exact same modern tech burnout? Because the Varchful report has its own set of prescriptions for Prasad, mapped to his specific planetary afflictions.
This is where the sources truly blew my mind. Because the ancient remedies prescribed for Prasad's specific chart in 2026 are shockingly practical, and they mirror the profiler perfectly. It is the ultimate less but better approach to grounding an overactive mind.
It's not about chanting in a cave.
No, it's about physical action.
Walk us through some of the specific ones.
So to address his physical and mental burnout, his Mercury and 6th house issues, the Varchful prescribes the simplest, most mundane things. It tells him, drink warm water with honey in the morning, fast on Saturdays until sunset, breaking the fast with a single salt-free meal.
Think about the mechanics of that. That is a biological baseline reset. Fasting forces the digestive system to rest. It enforces physical discipline over the mind's desire to consume. And crucially, it pulls his attention out of the cloud and back into his physical body.
Right, because you can't ignore it.
Exactly. You cannot ignore hunger. Hunger is a physical constraint. It grounds you in the present moment.
Exactly. Then, to address his chaotic energy, his lack of boundaries, and his debilitated Saturn, it suggests acts of physical service and organization. It says, sweep and clean the staircase, courtyard, or common area of your home. Wash and polish an old iron object. Organize your daily files to support quick analysis.
Iron is traditionally associated with Saturn. Saturn is the planet of hard reality, boundaries, limitation, and physical limits. Remember, his Saturn is debilitated, meaning he lacks structure. Polishing an iron object is a deeply metaphorical yet totally physical act of respecting the material.
It really is.
It's making him literally touch the metal. It forces a macro systems thinker to focus on a micro-physical task. Sweeping the courtyard is bringing order to physical entropy.
It also tells him to feed animals. Offer soaked red lentils to the morning sun. Feed sweet bread to a black dog. Put honey and black sesame under a peepal tree for insects.
This directly attacks his cognitive avoidance and isolation. It forces him out of his intellectual vacuum to care for biological systems that have basic, immediate physical needs. You can't prompt engineer a dog, you just have to feed it.
That's so true.
It reconnects him with the friction and the interdependent reality of the physical world.
And my absolute favorite one, specifically prescribed to cure his communication issues and his tendency to internalize stress, is Mercury affliction in Scorpio. The physical remedy is to tie a simple green cotton thread on your right wrist after morning prayers as a constant reminder to choose your words carefully.
Weniger, Aber, Besser. Less, but better. A simple physical constraint. A 2-cent piece of string on the wrist to remind a brilliant, chaotic mind to practice restraint before speaking.
It's brilliant.
It is the exact physical equivalent of the Dieter-Ram system, prompt banning the word delve. It is a localized physical guardrail to prevent verbal swap and unnecessary conflict.
If we connect all of this back to the human in the loop concept from the AI blueprint source, the blueprint explicitly warns that AI, no matter how advanced, lacks real-world experience and common sense. It says AI operates under strict handling rules, and people, physical humans, are ultimately responsible for the inputs and the outputs.
Yeah, the manual says you must own the final deliverable.
And the human mind operates under the exact same dynamic. The human intellect, much like the AI, can calculate infinite possibilities. It can simulate futures. It can live entirely in the non-deterministic cloud.
But the body, the human in the loop, has to execute those possibilities in the present physical reality. The mind desperately needs the physical body to ground it, to provide common sense, to feel the heat, the hunger, and the friction of reality. If the mind disconnects from the body, it hallucinates, it overpromises, it burns out.
Which brings us to Prasad's ultimate career goal, the identity he is supposed to consolidate in Phase 4. He drafts a LinkedIn post in the sources, establishing his new authority in the marketplace. He realizes that the market in 2026 doesn't need more generic prompt engineers who just sit in a vacuum generating 20,000 words of empathetic text.
No, enterprise clients aren't looking for more software wrappers that break when they hit the real world.
The market demands exactly what he calls the translation layer.
Yes, the translation layer. The rare individual who understands both the probabilistic, non-deterministic neural network of the AI and the thermal constraints, the yield strength of titanium, and the wear and tear friction of the physical machine.
The translation layer is the ultimate bridge.
It is the engineer who can look at the perfect mathematical output of the language model, understand its intent, but then look at the factory floor and say, that math is beautiful, but the bearings on actuator 4 will shear if we execute that command because it's 95 degrees in the warehouse today and the metal has expanded by 0.0002 millimeters. We need to throttle the torque.
Prasad writes this defining line in his post. Stop selling your ability to write code. Sell your ability to make the code respect the physics.
It is the flawless synthesis of everything we've explored today. Dieter Rams' mandate of utility first. The AI blueprint's relentless demand for high-signal truth over generic slop. The manifesto's stark warning about physical entropy destroying probabilistic assumptions, and Prasad's deeply personal struggle to anchor his own intellectual brilliance in the physical, biological reality of his daily life.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together for you listening right now. We started with what looked like a chaotic, almost absurd stack of sources, but the through line is undeniable and deeply urgent.
Absolutely.
Whether you are an elite enterprise prompt engineer architecting a massive, structurally sound 20,000-word persona, whether you are a systems architect deploying a vision language action model to control a manufacturing line, or whether you are just a human being trying to survive a high-stress, cognitively demanding work week without having a total mental and physical breakdown, you cannot ignore friction.
You cannot ignore the physical reality of the system you are operating within. A vacuum is an illusion.
The code must respect the material. If you write software that assumes a frictionless vacuum, the hardware will inevitably fail. And if you live purely in the probabilistic cloud of your own mind, ignoring your physical baseline, ignoring your sleep, eating garbage, and swallowing your emotional boundaries, you will shear your own spindle.
You'll break the machine.
You will suffer a catastrophic system failure. You will burn out. Dieter Rams was right all along, decades before AI even existed in this form. Strip away the decorative slop, face the hard, uncompromising reality of the material, and focus on utility first. Less, but better.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building directly on Prasad's realization about the future of work. If the future of 2026 and beyond truly belongs to the translation layer, those extremely rare individuals who can actually bridge the flawless, hallucinatory digital world with the degrading, high-friction physical world, how much of your daily life has been actually touching the metal?
That's a great question.
In a world that is racing to simulate everything, to automate every thought, and to live entirely in the cloud, is your most valuable, irreplaceable asset simply your connection to the physical friction of the real world.
Are you stuck inside the perfect mathematical blueprint? Or are you actually feeling the heat, the weight, and the wear and tear of the machine? Because as we said at the very beginning, the blueprint might look clean, it might look perfect, but the reality is always muddy waters.
Thank you for navigating those waters with us today.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Keep learning.